Hey guys! So today we will build a patch from scratch with a few of the modules from the HetrickCV collection, and the idea for this video came actually from my patrons, so thank you patrons for the idea and also for your support. So let's really start with the simplest module. We will start with the blank. Let's put it for here now. In the right click menu you can choose a few different designs. So we can just choose the design we want. I think I will go with this bleeding edge. This was a nice one. Okay, now we have this. Let's start with the sequence. And for this, let's go with the, again, Hetrick, with the random gates. The random gates module. And this module will receive a clock. So let's really use the multiplied clock, every clock multiplied by 4. So it will receive a clock, and now we can choose how many random outputs we want, minimum and maximum. I will stay with 8 in this case. And with the mode button we can choose what kind of signal will come out, triggers, hold, which is a sort of a gate eventually, and gates. Now I'm going to use another module, the digital to analog, which will convert the gates to a signal we can use for pitch. So let's use all the 8 gates. Very nice. In this case now it's still set to triggers. Let's have a look at this on the scope. Let's take the output to the scope, and you can see that with the triggers the results we are getting are not so useful. So let's change this in this case now to hold. And you can see that we can have, or we are getting stepped sequence, stepped signal you can use for sequencing. So let's do something like this. Let's add the quantum to be our quantizer. Very nice. And for our voice we will use, of course, the FM operator. Let's activate its level envelope and set a nice snappy envelope, something like this. Now let's send the output from digital to analog to quantum and to the oscillator. Let's use also the gate output to trigger the oscillator. Let's set a scale. Let's go with C, D, F, A and B flat. And let's send the oscillator to the mixer. Oh yeah. So we have a sequence. Now here we can change the scale or the range and also offset the signal. Let's leave it somewhere here, let's say. Okay, now let's do something like this. Let's use another module from HetrickCV. This one is called contrast. And let's send the FM operator also to contrast. And let's use also chronoblob 2 from all right devices. Sync it with our clock. Let's set a nice ping pong delay, change the time modulation. And let's send the contrast to the chronoblob, and from there to the mixer. Let's take this maybe a bit down. Let's solo this. So this is now just the FM going through contrast, which is a sort of a distortion module, to chronoblob. Oh yeah. Let's change the delay times a bit. Also with the feedback we can play. Very nice. Now this is just a signal going through chronoblob. Now it's both of them. And let's do something like this. Let's use sample and hold to modulate contrast and the feedback amount. And I will use the sample and hold from Bog Audio. Let's change this to 0. It's already set to 0 to positive 10 volts. I will use the same trigger or the same gate the FM operator is receiving. And now this will modulate the contrast, maybe a bit less, and the feedback amount. Oh yeah. So we have another layer, maybe a bit less wet, a bit less feedback. Okay, very nice. Now let's use another module from HetrickCV, which is the shift register, the analog shift register ASR, Now this module will take a signal, and in this case we will use the signal from Quantum, and it will sample it with each incoming clock. So in this case we will use a clock divided by 7 just for fun. Now it will not only sample this signal like sample and hold, but it will also shift it to the next output, so we get eventually 4 signals delayed by 1 clock from one another. And now let's use 2 VCOs, also from Bog Audio. Let's go with the ones from Bog Audio, which will look like this, 1 and 2. Let's use the first output to one oscillator, and let's say the last one to the second oscillator, so the signals are delayed from one another. Now another module from HetrickCV, which is called Scanner, and it will look like this. Let's send all the waveforms to it. Let's say square, triangle, let's go with sawtooth and sine, and another triangle and square, and sine, and another sawtooth. And now we can scan and morph between those waveforms, between those waves. So let's see, let's use the mix output. For now I have here a stereo channel, which is quite okay. Let's solo this, take the levels all the way up. And now I can scan between the waveforms, which are also differently tuned because they receive the same sequence but delayed from one another. We can also change the width of the scanning, so we will have more waveforms together. Here we have quite a few, and we will get this harmony. Okay, now let's do this. Let's send the mix. Let's send it first of all to another plateau or reverb, which by the way I have here also going through almost everything is going through a reverb, just a bit. But let's send this also to another dedicated reverb. Let's take the wet all the way down for a second. A bit more modulation, maybe less low frequencies here and maybe less high frequencies here. And let's take the dry signal all the way out and use only the wet signal. Oh yes. And now we can also modulate the scan function. So let's use the LFO, also from Bog Audio. Let's set it to slow, maybe triangle wave. It's bipolar, which is okay for now. You can see how it's scanning. Maybe a bit slower. A bit less wet. Oh yes. Okay, now let's do something like this. Let's use another module from HetrickCV. And this one is called 2 to 4. Now this module will take 2 signals, input A, input B, and create 4 variations from them. So let's use first signal will be from the quantizer. The first signal input A will be from the quantizer. And let's use another signal from the shift register. Let's take output 2 for example. Now, they have different rhythms, so hopefully we'll get interesting results also, but we will need to quantize the signals. So let's use polyphony, in this case with quantum, which is also polyphonic. So I will use the merge module to merge the signals into quantum. In this case we have just channel 1 for now. And I will also split the signals from quantum. So channel 1 will be all of what we've used until now. And let's also split the gates we are using. Again, channel 1, this is the same channel. Very nice. And now we can send the 4 variations to quantum through this merge module. So we have channel 2, 3, 4 and 5. You can see this also here, the number of channels. Very nice. Now for our voice we use the Voldemar oscillator from Lindenberg Research. Let's also use a sequential switch. and I will use the one from VCV sequential switch, the one that has 4 inputs and 1 output. So let's send the pitch information from the split module to the sequential switch 1, 2, 3 and 4. From there this will go to the oscillator, so the sequences will be switched sequentially according to an incoming clock, and I will use a clock divided by 8, which I have here. Now let's mix a few waves on the Voldemar and have a listen. So this will go to another stereo channel for now. Let's see how it sounds like. Let's say mix a sawtooth wave. Oh yeah, pulse wave. Sine maybe. You can choose a different phase of the waves. Okay, very nice. Now let's destroy the sound by using another module from HetrickCV, which is called Delta. It's this one here. And actually this is a great tool for getting gates and triggers from a slow moving signal. But in this case we will use it to destroy the sound. So let's connect the oscillator to the input of Delta, and let's have a listen. Let's start, let's say, with the triggers. Oh man. And now let's see the gates. They will sound a bit more. Oh yes. This is destroying the sound. Okay, let's send this also through a reverb, and I will use the one from Blamsoft this time. Now I know it sounds horrible by itself, but it will add this gritty layer to the sound, this more harmonics to the sound. So let's use the reverb 1 and 2. Let's take the low frequencies a bit down, or the time for the low frequencies down, a bit more time for the mids, no delay, a bit more modulation, mix all the way up. Let's change the crossover frequency to about 500, something like this. And now let's listen to everything together. So you can hear it adds this gritty layer to the overall sound. Again, without it sounds a bit not so gritty like now. Which is nice in the big picture. Okay, another module from HetrickCV, and this one is called the Gate Combine, which will look like this, which will combine gates from different sources into one gate. In our case, we will use a few of the gates from the random gates module. So let's use output 1, let's go with output 3, maybe also 6 and maybe 8 also. So we have 4 gates going to the gate combine. Maybe another one, let's go with 6 also. No, 6 we've used already, let's go with 7. Very nice. And now let's use 2 energy oscillators from the geodesics. Now this oscillator has a built-in VCA with a slight slew, so we can use the gates to trigger it through the multiply input. Let's also look at it on the scope. Do I still have the scope? Yes. So you can see this will be the OR output, so when 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or all of them together are active, we have a gate out of the OR output. And you can see that the gates have different lengths, which is quite cool. So let's use this OR output to trigger the first energy. And now we will use another module from HetrickCV, which is called flip-flop. Let's put this here. Now this is a sort of a switch that turns on and off according to the incoming signal. So let's send the OR output to the input T. Now input T stands for triggers, so this is the switch function, and we can look at it also on the scope, that you can see the differences. So this is again the OR output, and this is after the flip-flop. You can see there is some variation. Let's take this a bit down maybe. So we have two different gate signals with different lengths. So let's use this after the flip-flop. We will use this for the second energy, again in the multiply input. And let's use also two ADDR sequencers from Borg Audio, one for one oscillator and another one for the second oscillator. Let's randomize them, 1 and 2. Very nice. Now in the right click menu, let's choose negative positive 1 volt. So we have 2 octaves all in all. Let's set one to 7 steps, another one to 5. This was already on 7, never mind. Let's do something like this. Now let's run each of them with the respective gate. So this one will receive the gate from the OR output, and this one will receive the gate from the flip-flop. And let's send them to Quantum. Again, we have here the merge module, which is perfect for us. So they will go to 2 more channels on Quantum. And from there, this will go to the oscillator. So this will be 1, this will be another channel. Now let's send them to another stereo channel and have a listen. We'll solo this. Oh yeah. Very nice. Let's change their settings a bit. So I would change the tuning. Let's go here maybe up. And maybe here let's go down. Oh yeah. Now we also have the FM. Oh yes. The FM here amount, or momentum as it's called here. Let's use synced LFO. I will use the BPM LFO from Frozen Wasteland. Let's sync it with the clock. And this will modulate the FM, but I will use also the expander of this LFO. So we have a few different phases. I will add another division, another phase. So you can see this is our original LFO. And now here we have 90 degrees out of phase, or 180, or 270. So we have 4 different variations of this LFO. So let's divide this, let's say by 8, so it's a bit slower, and send this to modulate the FM of the oscillators. Very nice. Oh yeah. Okay, another module from Hetrick, which is called the analog to digital or digital. Now this will take a smooth signal and turn it into gates. So let's use the triangle wave from the LFO. Let's look at this also on the scope. This will be the gates, this will be the LFO. We have quite a lot of gates, but this is okay, we will change this later. Now let's use some drums from Autodaf. We will start with a kick and a snare. Let's wait for it, a kick and a snare. Very nice, and let's start actually with the snare. I will trigger it, let's send it first, wait a minute, let's send it first to the mixer, and now I will trigger it with, let's say, the first output, and be prepared. Okay, now you can hear it's pretty crazy, but what we can do, we can also sync the analog to digital or digital with the main clock, so let's do this. And now we will have gates that are synced with the clock. So let's use, let's say, output 2. And let's use a different snare, maybe the 909. Let's do the same also for the kick. And I will use, let's say, output 1. Oh yeah. It's a nice rhythm. Let's add also an open hat. Again, this will go to the mixer. Let's take the kick for a second after the reverb, and now the hat will be here. Oh yes, now that's better. Let's trigger this from output, let's say 4. Oh yes. And let's add also a clap. Let's trigger it from output 5, let's say, but this clap will go first through another chronoblob, another delay. So let's send it to the delay, sync again the delay with the clock. Very nice. Let's add some feedback and wetness. And now this will go to a stereo channel. Maybe a different trigger, let's say 7. Maybe 6. Okay, now let's modulate. This is nice and gritty. Let's modulate the delay times with sample and hold. I will use the same trigger as the clap. And let's go with 0 to positive 3 volts, let's say. Let's open the attenuators a bit. And now we can modulate the delay times. So with each hit they have different delay times. Let's multiply this also by 2. Oh yeah. Okay, now let's add a nice bass with the even VCO from Befaco and tangents from Vult. Let's send a sawtooth wave, 2 tangents, and then to a VCA, and I will use the one from VCV. And I will use also the the DADSR, sorry, the DADSR from Bog Audio, to sidechain this bass with the kick. So let's do something like this. Let's take the same trigger from the kick, trigger the DADSR, and we have here an inverted output that will go to the VCA. Take the sustain down, maybe I take also a bit down. So we have a nice sidechaining. Let's send this to the mixer, and first of all we have to tune the oscillator to D, because this is the scale we have here selected. So I will right click the tune knob and I will enter 2. This is a +2 semitones, which is D. Oh yeah. Let's take this down. Oh yeah, resonance. Yes, now let's use another sequential switch. This one, this time I will use the one from ML, again the 8 to 1, and I will use also constants, also ML, which will output constant voltage in steps of semitones. Now let's send the switch to the oscillator, to the volt per octave input of the oscillator, and let's use another gate from the analog to digital to drive the sequential switch. Let's go with number 8, let's say. And now positive 3 semitones will go to step 2, positive 5 will go to step 8, let's say, and negative 2 will go to step 4. Oh yeah. Let's modulate the cutoff point of the filter with BPM LFO. Maybe open it a bit. Okay, very nice, very nice. I think it was enough for today. I didn't use all of the modules, but we had some fun with a few of them. Like always, there will be a link in the description to this patch. Feel free to download it and take a closer look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you enjoy what I do, consider becoming a Patreon. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell. And have a good one.